Hi, everybody, and welcome back to season two of One More Thing with Ash. I'm so excited to bring you guys back for one more thing. Last season, we talked about love, and this season, we're talking about trauma. In the last season, we broke down love like we did. We're going to break down trauma in the exact same way. But before we get there, if you haven't gotten a chance to look at season one, we talked about love, we broke down to family, friends, etc. We talked about with my mom, we talked with one of my close friends, Cruz, and let me tell you, this if you thought that season one was a little starter, trust me, season two, we're talking about trauma. There will be some tears shed. We're gonna get deeper and deeper and deeper. And then this season, I have six guests, and I got a little surprise for you. We got 8 episodes total, so six of them will be with six of my friends that I believe that will you guys can probably connect with. Their stories have really touched my soul, and I've known these folks that are going to come, my friends that are going to come on for a while, and these are people that I know that I can have a really deep conversation with, meaningful and insightful. And I was like, why don't we just bring this to the podcast? So I want to welcome you to season two. Since then, I had a birthday. I'm now 31, so yay. But I also got a new tattoo. Probably looking at the camera going, wow, Ash got a lot of tattoos. Well, I got a new one. It's number 21, so here we are. But anyways, but since then, I've had some changes in my life, another loss in my family, and so um, I figured that we talk about how death is traumatizing this season, so we will get to that, I promise. But for now, this episode is going to be just about what is trauma. So, um, but uh, uh, so what is trauma? So the trauma really is a severe. And this is off of Google. I wanted to pull the definition out. It's like how can you describe love last season? So it's like, I'll just pull out the regular definition. So from the Oxford Dictionary, trauma is a severe emotional shock, psychological distress, or physical injury resulting from a disturbing, violent, or life-threatening event. Um, that is the definition of trauma just from our friends at Google and the Oxford Dictionary, but trauma really is that lasting impact an event that has had on your life. It could be a car accident. It could be maybe you were abused as a child, so you react to certain things in certain ways because of the trauma that happened in the past. It could be I know for me, like being yelled at triggers me and it brings back trauma to when I was a kid, being yelled at by my teachers. And so I respond to people that yell I kind of just shut down, and that's just a traumatic response. And so mentally, that's mental trauma. There's physical trauma, there's, psychological, etc. So that's how I would give a few examples of trauma. Um, but, like I said, you may respond to a certain event a certain way because of what happened to you in the past. I know for me, um, I had a lot of. I'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it in the death episode. But I want to kind of like the. I think my brother's death really like traumatized me in a sense that it kind of just brought back like just old feelings that it's just the way I reacted to it was a lot different than a lot of deaths that I've experienced prior. I think the first death that ever traumatized me was my grandfather's passing when I was 7. Imagine being 7 years old and your literal best friend in the whole world just passes away. You don't know how to. Your parents are having a hard time explaining what death is, and explaining to your kid like why is Papa gone all of a sudden, and you're at a funeral in a church crying your eyes out and looking at a casket and stuff like that. And for me, if I think about it, it's actually coming to me like I was a little traumatized at my brother's funeral because I was sitting on the exact seat I was sitting um, back when I was 7 years old. So it kind of gave me that flashback, and it was just like, oh, here we are again. But death is a part of life, and it's something that you can't really control or handle. It's just it happens. And so um, trauma, you know, it starts. It could it there are sources of trauma. So those they could start from when you were a kid, something happened, or it could also be environmentally. So like I said, you get into a car accident, that traumatizes you. So every time like you hit the brakes in a car, like I'm sure for me, I got trauma because I've been in a few accidents. My heart starts racing, I start sweating, and it's just that's that bodily, physical trauma response that I have to that. So, um, and it's for me, it's I sure it's different. It's the shock to your nervous system, really. So people think that it's trauma and stress are two different things. Stressing is normal because you're allowed to stress over certain things, um, and going to interviews or going to a new job, or you're stressing out about a date you're about to go on. Trauma is a lot different. It's a trigger response. I know an ex of mine that was raped, and so it throughout our entire relationship, he had, and especially towards the end of our relationship, it wasn't so much that I was doing something bad. It was more of like I could say like one word, or he saw like a windmill, and it reminded him of the person that raped him and brought him back. And like completely changed his mood for the day. He got quiet. So that is a great example of just like emotional trauma where you just kind of just shut down. That's your response to that trigger. Um, I know that I have triggers. I am working on them. I feel like I've gotten a lot better at it. I am, there's plenty of times where I've been accused of something or bullied for being gay, and it's been traumatic for me. And I think I've worked through that trauma, and now I'm just like, you know what? You can call me any word in the dictionary. It really doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't try to take it personal anymore. And so I feel like I've worked on that trauma a little bit. And I'm getting a little bit better at it. I feel like I don't have a lot of trauma from family wise. I feel like I was pretty, what's the word? Um, I had a pretty normal childhood. I mean, traumatic wise, I was teased in high school. So, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If we are having some new folks, welcome back. Or some returning guests, welcome back. I in the last season I touched about it, but I went to Catholic and Christian school. So when I went to Christian high school, most of my friends were girls. And I wasn't out yet, so I was always teased being like femboy and all the other things and the F word and all the other things. And so for me, that was very traumatic. And then like when they had a gosh, I we're laying it out on the table this season too. Okay, in Christian school they make you have one Bible class a year. The last my senior year was, wait for it, it was called Journey to Manhood, guys. Whoop whoop. Yes, Journey to Manhood. It's really about manhood. And oh gosh, it was crazy. No, we went camping and all the football players were teasing me. They were like, "Oh my God, do you think this guy is hot?" And at the time, I was just like, in my head, I'm like, I like guys, but I'm not comfortable being around telling you guys. I'm not comfortable being out. I still don't know what gay really means. Um, and for that reason, I kind of pushed that part of me down and was just like, all right, I can't be free of this trauma of being teased. And so I'm just gonna they were bullies. They were a lot of things, and like I said, it used to bother me, but I think I've really healed from that trauma. And now at 31 years old, I've been out for 10 years, and I have no problem with I don't take it personally anymore. If you got a problem with me, that is on you. If you want to talk about me, then I guess that's great. Talk about me, great. But anywho, um, so I also want to know from you guys, uh, does trauma manifest itself? How does trauma manifest itself? I want to know what your thoughts are in the comments. But for me, trauma really manifests itself because I feel like you give the power to that situation back from the past. Um, for me, like I used to be yelled at by school teachers and stuff like that, and now it's as an adult, like I took that into my first job and I got yelled at by my boss, and I was like, "Oh my God, don't hurt me!" And he was like, "Why are you shutting down? Why is your whole demeanor changing, Ash? Like, don't worry about it. Like, we'll get to it. I was just upset, etc." And so came back down just to basic communication. But other than that, it can manifest itself if you allow it to give that power back. I know that some situations like being raped or molested or all that kind of stuff can be really hard to come back from. I personally can't speak upon that because it's never happened to me. But if you're out there and you are a victim of sexual assault or anything like that, there are resources out there. Last season, I talked about the LGBT Center here in LA if you're queer. And I'm sure there are other services out there if you are not queer too. But anyway, yeah, I feel like it does manifest itself. If it's always gonna happen. I don't think it necessarily manifests itself. It kind of just happens. Life events happen, and so I don't think it really truly like manifests itself. But I truly want to know what you guys think because this is your space. Um, but I also want I a viewer asked me this. Actually, a friend of mine who you'll see in the next episode. We were talking about it in the car right here. Have you healed from trauma? And I kind of just touched upon it a little bit. That's a very loaded question because there's all kinds of traumas that I've experienced. Like I said, I've healed from that trauma from high school. Death wise, I feel like I'm working on it. It's still death still hurts and grief and all other things, but the trauma from that hasn't really. It's I'm working on it. And then the trauma from being in a 4.5 long year relationship and dealing with the emotional and physical abuse that I experienced, like it's now 6 years later, and I feel like I've healed from it. I've put the right people in my life, and I have the right support system. I have a beautiful relationship with both of my parents, and I feel like I've really just moved on from that trauma itself. Um, but let's go ahead and pause there. I want to as I don't want this season to feel like it's a down a season, but I want to throw a little bit of fun in here because it's one more thing. It's just one more thing I want to add in here. Um, I want to go ahead and give an example of we kind of touched upon little pieces of trauma and events that triggered me, but I kind of want to expand upon that relationship and that trauma and kind of my own personal trauma too. Um, like I said, I was in a 4.5 year relationship with someone. I had moved. We met in college. We ended up moving in with each other, rented a room out, and uh, in a house together, and then we eventually moved into an apartment together. So I really had got. This is the farthest I've ever gone with somebody. This is my first relationship, long term relationship, um, and something really really bad happened to him that kind of triggered him a little bit, and it kind of brought him back and spiraled him back to made him feel like what happened to him when he was a kid. Um, and so for me, like I don't I've forgiven this person, moved on from it, but I could see for me like I it got back to these horrible fights, and my traumatic response to all that was to eat, stuff my feelings, um, and drink and stuff like that. I was in a really 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 dark space when stuff that harshness of an event that happened for we were together for 4.5 years. That was probably the latter part of the 2.5. So I dealt with that for 2.5 years, and I was so trapped in that relationship and traumatized by what he was doing, and traumatized by the feeling of, am I going to be loved again? Am I going to experience love again if I leave this person? I'm never going to get married. Those kinds of things in my head. But if I think about it now, he kind of ingrained those thoughts and those feelings, and I made them my own. When in reality, I'm single now, but hey, who knows? Who knows? But um, I am the person you see now is a lot different than I was 6 years ago. I feel like I was a lot more not. I'm still my bubbly, fun self, but I was really a hurt person, really quiet. I was triggered by a lot of things, like I would hear shouting, and I just had a body knee jerk reaction to that, thinking it was him, and I was like, oh wait, that's just some homeless guy yelling on the corner over there. But anywho, but like, I it it really, gosh, it was awful. It was that last year. It took me a whole year to break up with this person. Um, I will probably talk more and more and more and more about it in the trauma relationship episode, but this one really, like, I think that was the last time I experienced like something that was extremely traumatic. Um and so it really it made me feel like I can't we're not cussing on one more thing, but it made me feel like poop. It made me really feel awful, and I really have moved on from it, and you can heal from it too. I went to therapy for a year and a half, and finally, after a year and a half, my therapist was like, Ash, well, you're repeating the same thing over and over again, so I think we're okay here. If you feel like you need to come back, do so. But I feel like you got a good head on your shoulders. You know what you want. And shout out to therapy out there. It really helped me bring me back to center and bring me back to who I am, and brought me out of that trauma. Um, and so, I sometimes in those situations, I felt like I was the bad guy because I was doing everything in my power to help my ex at the time heal from his trauma. But in reality, and in any situation, you are in control of healing your situation. And in that moment, I realized, why am I have the support I need, but really the only person that can really get me out of this situation and in this mindset is me. So I did the work. I did the therapy. I um, expanded my network, met new people, gained new experiences, um, and really got out of the situation. I felt like I was the bad guy in the situation because I really couldn't fix something. But in my situation of trauma, like being triggered by all those things, for a while I was really triggered, and I kept bringing that trauma from that relationship to a few people I've dated, and that's so unfair to the next person that you're dating. So if you are moving on to another person, do your best to take the lessons you learn there, but don't bring this person is not the next person. So they're a completely different person. So I've gotten a lot better at that. Um, but like I said, I feel like I've really healed from that experience. And so, anywho, um, I want to thank you guys for coming back for season two, One More Thing with Ash. And like mentioned beforehand, and I will always mention to you, this is a safe space for you and for me to be and heal while having one honest conversation at a time. And I am extremely excited for the season ahead. Trauma is a very dense topic. We're gonna get real here and dig deeper and continue the conversation. And you know what? I can't wait for you to meet all my guests. These are friends of mine, and I am so excited that they are willing to put themselves out there to be a part of this journey and be a part of the conversation. So, anywho, but if I can add one more thing, if anyone hasn't told you today or recently, I love you and I believe in you, and you can do anything you set your beautiful mind to. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, like, share for maybe someone that needs to hear this today. But as we expand this safe space together, I am so excited for you to join us. This is one more thing, and we will see you next time. Thank you.